Cities burn, they always have, but 7 times in the last 150 years, fire transformed the rules. Not forest blazes in remote valleys, urban infernos, flames that swallowed downtowns, business districts, residential neighborhoods. Fires so intense, they created their own weather. So fast that escape routes vanished in minutes. So complete that entire populations became refugees overnight. We are talking about documented catastrophes where the receipts exist. Death tolls counted in thousands. Buildings measured in tens of thousands destroyed. Economic losses that reshaped nations. This is not speculation. These are events recorded by armies, fire departments, insurance companies, and survivors who wrote it all down while the ashes were still hot. It is the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you are hearing this from. Also, this script is researched and factual, using sources from the United States Strategic Bombing Survey published October 1945, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department records archived, at the center of the Tokyo Raids and War Damage and Koto Ward, CAL FIRE incident reports. Maintained by the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, the National Institute of Standards and Technology Forensic Investigations, city archives from Oakland and Chicago dating back to 1871, and United States Geological Survey earthquake documentation. Deep research, real sources. Now back to the information. March 9th to 10th, 1945, Operation Meeting House. Honjo, Fukagawa wards, 3 miles by 4 miles, 750,000 people packed into wood and paper houses. General Curtis LeMay stripped the bombers down, no guns, low altitude, 5,000 feet, nighttime. The Japanese had minimal night fighter capability. Anti-aircraft fire was weaker at low altitude. LeMay gambled everything on incendiaries, 1,665 tons of them. M69 napalm bomblets. Each E-46 cluster bomb carried 47 bomblets filled with jellied gasoline, released at 2,000 feet. Designed to punch through roofs and burn from the inside. Each held 5,000 people, 90,000 capacity, 4.3 million residents. 98% of buildings were wood and paper. Do the math. The bombs hit their targets. Thousands of small fires merged. What happened next has a name: Firestorm. When enough fires combine, they consume oxygen so fast they create a vortex. Hurricane-force winds generated by the fire itself. Temperatures reached 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. People's shoes melted into the asphalt. Skin ignited before the flames even touched them. Carbon monoxide suffocated 70% of victims before the fire reached them. No escape route. Her family reached the river. Her mother jumped in, holding her youngest sister. Yoshiko followed with the baby. When she surfaced, her mother's hair was on fire. The protective hood had failed. Her mother died in the water, her face looking into Yoshiko's eyes. Yoshiko survived. Her baby survived. Her mother, father, and 1 sister died that night, among 100,000. Conservative estimate. The Tokyo Fire Department said 97,000 killed, 125,000 wounded. The U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey said 88,000 dead, 41,000 injured, over 1 million homeless. Historian Richard Rhodes placed it over 100,000. The smell of burning human flesh filled the B-29 cockpits at 5,000 feet. Bombardier Maynard David said, when they opened the bomb bay doors, smoke from the ground filled the plane. The odor was so strong they had to open the doors again after dropping, just to let fresh air in. The smell soaked into flight suits for days. Single deadliest air raid in human history. At Candlestick Park in San Francisco, 10 miles across the Pacific Ocean, simulation is wrong, but ash from similar California fires would later fall on baseball fields. The point stands. The scale was visible from orbit. Tokyo burned for days. Bodies littered the target area, unidentifiable, reduced to ash and bone fragments. 300,000 to 330,000 Japanese civilians killed total. 8 million left homeless. 40% of Japan's urban areas destroyed. 60% of Tokyo went up in flames. His relative lack of involvement in wartime decisions ended that day. 6 months later, he announced Japan's surrender. The fire did what the military could not. Royal Air Force and United States Army Air Forces had been testing a new tactic. Strips of tinfoil dropped from aircraft, called window, completely blinded German radar. On July 24th, the British bomber fleet appeared over Hamburg undetected. First wave, high explosives, shattered roofs. Blew out windows, gutted internal structures. Firefighters scrambled. Then the second wave, incendiaries. The fires started inside the ruins. No way to fight them. Massive coordination. 791 aircraft. Then the Americans joined. Daylight raids, round-the-clock bombing. The city never stopped burning. She was in her cellar with her daughter, Corolla. The heat rose. People prayed. They screamed. She could not feel anything anymore. thought her life was at an end. Hour by hour it got worse. Could not breathe. She lost her daughter that night, one of 42,000 casualties. Later she fled to Dresden, thought it was safe. Oxygen consumption was so great it caused a violent spiral in the surrounding streets. Cellars became death traps, people sitting in chairs, all dead, asphyxiated. Some areas showed ash on cellar floors where bodies had been, nothing else, vaporized. 34,000 people killed according to most estimates. Some sources say as high as 42,000, 180,000 wounded, 60% of the city's houses destroyed, 46,000 structures gone, 12 square miles leveled, 1 million people evacuated. The city's labor force dropped 10% overnight. No subsequent raid shook Germany like Hamburg. Documents from Allied interrogations after the war showed Hitler stated that more raids of similar weight would force Germany out of the war. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel wrote to his wife August 3, 1943, "Hamburg has been a catastrophe for us." Goering's Luftwaffe, which had bombed London, could do nothing. German fire services were overwhelmed. By December 1, 1943, 31,647 dead were confirmed. Only 15,802 were identified from bodies. The rest estimated from ash quantities in cellars. Those three factors repeated themselves in every major urban firestorm that followed. The formula was now known. That is the myth. Reality: Dresden was a rail center, 7th largest city in Germany. Over 20 German troop trains passed through daily heading to the Eastern Front, factories producing arms, Soviet forces pushing west. Allies wanted to degrade German resistance. Air Marshal Arthur Harris had wanted to target Dresden for years. Now he had his chance. High explosives, followed by incendiaries. Pathfinders marked the target. Bombers came in low. Between 10,000 and 13,000 feet. No resistance. Perfect weather for accurate bombing. 15 minutes, 880 tons of bombs on the city center. Windows shattered. Streets cratered, walls flattened. Then the incendiaries hit. Fires started everywhere at once. Roofs, internal structures. The stage was set. Now they dropped another load into the flames. The firestorm reached its peak. Historian Donald Miller describes it. People's shoes melted into the hot asphalt. Fire moved so swiftly that many were reduced to atoms before they had time to remove their shoes. Fire melted iron and steel. Turned stone into powder, caused trees to explode. People running from the fire could feel its heat through their backs, burning their lungs. 70% of victims suffocated from carbon monoxide. Not burned, suffocated. Beautiful old oak trees, 300 years old. She thought they could reach open space there. When she came out, all she could see was fire. 300-year-old oaks turned into torches. Pavilions vaporized. The fire created winds. Physicist Freeman Dyson worked as an analyst for RAF Bomber Command. He said it was like a hurricane. All conditions for a perfect firestorm coincided. Smoke towers shooting 15,000 feet into the air. Hard to find targets. They hit the marshalling yard. They also hit residential areas. February 15th, 4th raid. Dresden kept burning. More than 3,900 tons of bombs. 1,600 acres of city center destroyed. 25,000 people killed. That is the current accepted figure from a 2010 study commissioned by Dresden City Council. Nazi propaganda claimed 200,000 dead. Holocaust denier David Irving spread that number for decades. Admitted in 1966 that his documentation was forged. Real figure, 25,000. Still catastrophic. American prisoner of war, assigned to sanitary cleanup. He wrote Slaughterhouse 5 about it, described shelters that looked like a streetcar full of people who simultaneously had heart failure, robbed of oxygen. Cold fact. Gerhard Hauptmann, Nobel Prize recipient, Prussian dramatist, said, "Those who have unlearned how to cry will learn it afresh on the destruction of Dresden, the cultural center of Germany, reduced to rubble in 3 days, bodies handled by the cartload, mass burials, exhumation impossible in many cases." October 8th to 10th, 1871. What matters? The city was a tinderbox. Chicago had received only 1 inch of rain from July 4th to October 9th. Severe drought. 2/3 of structures were made entirely of wood. Most houses and buildings topped with tar or shingle roofs. Highly combustible. Sidewalks made of wood. Many roads made of wood. Balloon frame construction, lightweight, fast to build, burns like kindling. But watchman Matthias Schaffer sent them to the wrong place. By the time they corrected course, the fire had grown. Southwest winds, strong, 35 to 45 miles per hour estimated. Dry conditions, temperatures in the low to mid-80s, relative humidity 35 to 40%. Perfect conditions. The fire spread north and east into the heart of Chicago's business district. Structures often had a single layer of fireproof material on the outside. wooden structure beneath. The waterworks on Pine Street had slate roofing, pine structure underneath. Burning ember hit the roof in the first hours. Waterworks destroyed. Water supply failed. Game over. Fire burned for more than 24 hours. October 9th, still raging. October 10th morning. Rain finally moved in. Firefighters got control, but by then, 4 miles long, 3/4 of a mile wide. 2,000 acres, 73 miles of roads destroyed. 120 miles of sidewalk gone. 2,000 lampposts, 17,500 buildings destroyed. Property loss, $222 million, 1/3 of the city's valuation. 300 people dead, 100,000 homeless, 1/3 of the population. John R. Chapin, illustrator for Harper's Weekly, eyewitness. He wrote, "I felt myself a second Nero as I sat down to make the sketch. Such a fearful calamity. Human life being destroyed, wealth swept away, misery entailed upon untold thousands." He forced his nervous system calm enough to record the scene. From across the river, he watched desperate citizens attempt to save their belongings as flames claimed Chicago's distinguished buildings. Mayor Roswell B. Mason's order. Looting had broken out. Lawlessness, martial law declared. Ended 3 days of chaos. Lifted several weeks later. Joseph Medill, elected mayor the next month, promised stricter building and fire codes. Easy promise. Most voting records destroyed in the fire. Impossible to prevent people from voting multiple times. He won. Crudely lettered sign above the entrance. W. D. Kerfoot. All gone but wife, children, and energy. The city rebuilt in 20 years. Population reached 500,000 by 1880. Architects flocked there. Louis Sullivan, Dankmar Adler, William Holabird, Daniel H. Burnham, John Wellborn Root, William LeBaron Jenney. They designed skyscrapers, steel frames. The modern American city was born in Chicago's ashes. Maximum Mercalli intensity unknown. Extreme. San Andreas fault slipped. Segment about 275 miles long. Shockwaves felt from southern Oregon to Los Angeles. 45 to 60 seconds of violent shaking. City not prepared. Thousands of unreinforced brick buildings. Closely spaced wooden Victorian dwellings. Structures crumbled. City Hall collapsed. Palace Hotel's glass roof splintered. Cable cars stopped. But the earthquake was just the opening act. The real destroyer was fire. Water supply failed. Mains broken. Firefighters could not stop the flames. Fire Chief Dennis Sullivan, mortally wounded in the initial quake, died 4 days later. Chain of command disrupted. Mayor Eugene Schmitz called in the United States Army. Fort Mason troops reported to Hall of Justice at 7 in the morning. Schmitz issued a shoot-to-kill order for looters, enforced dusk-to-dawn curfew. Soldiers patrolled the streets. Some soldiers looted. Captain Leonard D. Wildman of the Army Signal Corps reported being stopped by a fireman who said people were firing their houses, told that they would not get insurance on earthquake damage unless the damage was caused by fire. Insurance fraud in the middle of a catastrophe. Wind pushed the flames. Firefighters used dynamite to create fire breaks, demolished buildings to stop the advance. 4 square miles leveled, 500 city blocks, 28,000 buildings destroyed. Property loss, $400 million in 1906. $10.4 billion in 2024 dollars. Insured losses, $235 million. $6.13 billion today. Official count at the time, 700. Many deaths went unreported. Chinatown casualties never properly counted. Poor neighborhoods ignored. Bodies buried quickly to prevent disease. Mass graves. Population of San Francisco at the time, 400,000. 225,000 became homeless. More than half the city. They slept in tents in city parks and the Presidio, stood in long lines for food, required to cook in the streets to minimize fire threat. Performing Carmen at the Grand Opera House. Earthquake woke him in his Palace Hotel suite. He fled the city, swore never to return. Palace Hotel burned to the ground, rebuilt later, lost landmark. Dresden-born photographer Arnold Genthe documented the destruction. His photographs preserved in archives showed streets littered with rubble, buildings reduced to facades, smoke hanging over everything. A minute later, the flames were leaping upward. There was no opposing the flames, no organization, no communication. All the cunning adjustments of a 20th century city had been smashed by the earthquake. The great water mains had burst. All the shrewd contrivances and safeguards of man had been thrown out of gear by 30 seconds twitching of the earth crust. Within 3 days, San Francisco reverted to civic chaos. Gold rush days of the 19th century returned. Army and a self-appointed Citizens Committee of 50 managed sanitation, food, clothing, shelter for newly destitute and homeless population. The city rebuilt. Panama Pacific International Exposition in 1915 showed the world the results, but the memory remained. Worst natural disaster in California history until 2018. 7151 Buckingham Boulevard, Oakland Hills, half-mile from western entrance to Caldecott Tunnel. Oakland Fire Department responded. Mutual aid from East Bay Regional Park District, Cal Fire. Knocked it down quickly. No structural damage. Fire appeared out. Crews left. But embers smoldered beneath pine needles, unseen, waiting. Pushed uphill. Ground was parched. 5 years of drought. No precipitation for months. December 1990, freeze killed massive quantities of brush and eucalyptus. Dead fuel everywhere. Steep terrain. 450-foot drop into Mescal Canyon. Homes built on slopes. Wood-shake roofs. Wood chip mulch and landscaping. Perfect fuel. Fire moved like an express train. Northwest edge of Montclair District. Upper Rockridge. Fire generated its own wind. Definition of firestorm. Superheated fire-driven winds. Erratic. Dangerous. Temperatures reached 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. 10 minutes for a house to collapse. Firefighters could not establish perimeter. Narrow streets on steep hills. Radio communications failed. Large engines could not get close. Water pipes burst from heat. Homeowners tried hosing roofs. Pipes failed. No water. James Riley, Oakland Fire Battalion Chief, age 49, died protecting a woman from falling power line. His wife Christine said he died exactly the way he wanted to die. He died fighting fires, fast and heroic. 14 others physically or mentally impaired. 19 died in their homes. Some died in cars, trying to escape. Traffic gridlock. Flames overtook vehicles. Bodies found in streets and driveways. One resident remembered, flames everywhere. By the time we left our apartment complex, it was completely surrounded in flames. Flames coming into the cars as we drove out. At Candlestick Park, 10 miles across the bay, the 49ers were playing the Detroit Lions. Ash fell onto the field. Pages from cookbooks, sheet music, debris from burning homes carried by the wind. Players saw it. Niners left tackle Steve Wallace said after the game, "On the second drive, I realized it was hard to breathe out here. Some ash hit me in the face mask. Something was happening that should not be happening." Final score, 49ers 35, Lions 3. Nobody cared. They were watching paradise burn. 437 apartment and condominium units gone. 3,469 total housing units. Economic loss, $1.5 billion, $3.07 billion in 2024 dollars. Cold fact, the fire validated lessons from 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Collaborating agencies. Responding to disasters, CARD, had built nonprofit preparedness infrastructure, key to addressing vulnerable communities, firefighting equipment deficient during disaster. Oakland City firefighters now carry extensive wildland firefighting gear, fire shelters, standard equipment. Before the firestorm, they wore turnouts, heavy, slowed them down, overheated them, communications coordinated, hydrant fittings standardized, water systems upgraded. Fire prevention inspections increased, 20,000 homes inspected annually, 1,100 acres of open space cleared, one of the most comprehensive fire prevention programs in California. But the risk remains. Eucalyptus stands above Mountain Boulevard, go off like tiki torches. Trees are beautiful, trees are fuel. Pacific Gas and electric transmission line. Faulty hook supporting electrical line. 100-year-old tower near Pulga, California. Hook failed, line fell, sparked. 6:31, first responder dispatched. 6:45, fire captain arrived. Found well-established fire, inaccessible. Sustained winds 35 miles per hour. Declared potential for major incident. Katabatic winds descending from higher elevations. Pushed fire upslope, overridge. Softball-sized embers carried aloft, landed downwind. Spot fires in Concow, Magalia. 7:45, Paradise residents calling. Homes on fire. Fewer than 30% of residents had signed up. Alert failed. FEMA system did not work properly. Residents drove down streets knocking on doors one by one. Get out now. Firebrands casting ahead. Spot fires everywhere, no perimeter. 3 sides attacked simultaneously, east, north, west. Traffic jammed on evacuation routes. Skyway, Clark Road, Pence Road. Sharp curves, inadequate shoulders, fire hazards adjacent, vehicles trapped, people abandoned cars, ran on foot, and on. Some died in vehicles, flames overtook them, carbon monoxide suffocation. Others died trying to save pets. Elderly could not move fast enough. 80% of fatalities were over 65. 12 physically or mentally impaired. Inroads into Paradise, northern outskirts. Spot fires farther south. 6 in the evening. 55,000 acres. 95% of Paradise burned. 4 hours. An entire town. 26,000 people gone. Cal Fire Division Chief John Messina radioed. Fire progressed all the way through town. By noon, we had conceded that the town had basically burned down. Conceded. Military term, surrender. Surrounding states. Air tankers dropping fire retardant. 52,000 people evacuated from disaster zone. 85 did not make it. Deadliest wildfire in United States history. Surpassed Peshtigo fire of 1871. 153,336 acres burned. 18,804 structures destroyed. 14,000 residences, 5 public schools in Paradise, rest home, churches, part of Feather River Hospital, Christmas tree farm. Shopping center anchored by Safeway, Black Bear Diner, McDonald's, numerous small businesses, Honey Run covered bridge over Butte Creek, last 3-span Pratt-style truss bridge in United States, incinerated November 10th. PG&E filed bankruptcy January 2019. Expected wildfire liabilities, $30 billion. Company admitted criminal behavior, pleaded guilty. Butte County Superior Court. Factual basis established. People's statement in aggravation for sentencing. 84 souls lost in most horrific way imaginable. Burned to death. December 3rd. Casualties revised to 85 after remains in 3 separate bags identified as same victim. Fragmentary condition of bodies. Identification difficult. Forensic workers sifting through ash. 2-gallon orange plastic buckets, bone and cartilage, carried away. Unbearably inhumane. Of homes built after California WUI code implemented in 2008, homes that were code compliant, 56% were destroyed by campfire. Code does not stop fire. Odds of building survival are complex calculus, tied to neighbors' preparedness. Enforcement of fire hygiene throughout community. Town of Paradise now requires more than California building code. Weed abatement, fencing adjacent to buildings, accessory building separations, defensible space maintenance, local adoption, exportable. First certificate of occupancy awarded July 2019. Town rebuilt, but memory remains. 18 days, 85 dead. Paradise reduced to smoking foundations and chimneys standing alone. Look at the data. Tokyo, wooden construction, high winds, incendiaries designed for maximum spread. Hamburg, prolonged drought, coordinated bombing, firestorm generated by concentration and timing. Dresden, strategic target, perfect weather, 3 waves in rapid succession. Chicago, severe drought, wooden city, failed water supply, equipment sent to wrong location. San Francisco, earthquake broke mains, ruptured gas lines, hundreds of ignition points, no water. Oakland, 5 years drought, Diablo winds, steep terrain, wood roofs, narrow roads, eucalyptus fuel. Paradise, century-old infrastructure failure, katabatic winds, wildland-urban interface, inadequate evacuation system, elderly population. Common elements, wind speeds above 30 miles per hour, extended drought or dry conditions, high-density fuel load, compromised water supply, rapid fire spread, exceeding response capability, mass evacuation complicated by infrastructure limits, every single one, and temperature. When fire creates its own wind, when temperatures exceed 1,000 degrees, when oxygen gets consumed faster than air can replace it, you get firestorm, carbon monoxide, asphyxiation, death before burning, 70% in Tokyo, similar in Hamburg, similar in Dresden. The body count climbs not from flames, but from suffocation. 2 pumping stations, fireboats, cisterns, bay water intakes, unlimited water from the bay, higher pressures, system designed so 1906 never happens again. Oakland coordinated communications after 1991, standardized equipment, upgraded water systems, 20,000 annual home inspections, cleared 1,100 acres of open space. Paradise adopted stricter codes than California requires. Local enforcement, weed abatement, defensible space, fencing, building separations. Every lesson written in ash and bone. January 2025, Palisades Fire, Eaton Fire, Los Angeles. Largest urban area burned in California in at least 40 years, according to University of Wisconsin-Madison researcher Franz Schug. Killings at least 27 people. Destroyed more than 12,000 structures. 80,000 under evacuation orders. Among most destructive in California history per Cal Fire. Why? Climate change raising global temperatures, more severe weather, droughts in western United States, urban sprawl into wildland. If these conditions get worse or more frequent in future, it would not be surprising if there were more events that threaten densely populated places. 1.4 million homes built in California wildland urban interface areas between 1990 and 2020. 40% increase. Fires begin close to populated areas, often caused by people. Proximity means usually extinguished sooner, unless winds exceed 50 miles per hour. Unless drought lasts 5 years, unless infrastructure fails, unless evacuation routes jam, unless elderly cannot move fast, Unless code compliance is 56% destruction rate even for new homes. Unless. Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. Cal Fire Incident Reports. National Institute of Standards and Technology. Oakland Fire Department logs. Chicago Historical Society archives. United States Geological Survey. Documents, photographs, survivor testimony, death certificates, insurance claims. Forensic analysis, satellite imagery, radio transcripts, every claim backed, every number sourced, every name recorded. This is not speculation. This is documented history. Cities that thought they were safe learned otherwise. Tokyo had shelters for 90,000 in a city of 4.3 million. Chicago had 17 fire engines for entire city. San Francisco thought modern water system was sufficient until earthquake. Oakland had fought fires in same location in 1923, 1970, 1980. Kept rebuilding. Paradise ignored 1905 Cal Fire, warning about east wind-driven conflagration risk. 2009 grand jury report noted evacuation route constraints. Kept building anyway. Human nature, optimism bias. It will not happen here. It will not happen to me. It will not be that bad. One ruptured gas main. 1 hour later, 800 buildings burning. 4 hours later, 95% of town destroyed. 10 hours later, firestorm contained only because wind relented. 17 days later, full containment after 5,000 firefighters. 85 dead. $16.5 billion loss, and that is just one fire. Multiply across 7 events. Add the numbers. Tokyo, 100,000 dead. Hamburg, 42,000. Dresden, 25,000. Chicago, 300. San Francisco, 3,000. Oakland, 25. Paradise, 85. Total, 170,335 confirmed deaths from 7 fires in urban areas where people thought they were protected. Dresden, $350 million in property loss. Chicago, $222,171, $5 billion in 2021 adjustment. San Francisco, $400 million, $1906, $10.4 billion today. Oakland, $1.5 billion, $3.07 billion adjusted. Paradise, $16.5 billion. Total documented economic loss from these 7 fires, over $30 billion in current value. Likely, much higher accounting for wartime damage difficulty. Tokyo, 267,171 buildings. Hamburg, 46,000. Dresden, estimate 28,000 in 1,600 acre zone. Chicago, 17,500. San Francisco, 28,000. Oakland, 3,469. Paradise, 18,804. Total, 409,944 structures. Nearly 410,000 buildings, homes, businesses, churches, schools, hospitals, libraries, gone in 7 fires. Displaced persons. Tokyo, over 1 million. Hamburg, 1 million evacuated. Dresden, unknown but substantial refugee population already present. Chicago, 100,000. San Francisco, 225,000. Oakland, 10,000 evacuated, 52,000 in disaster zone. Paradise, 52,000. Total, over 2.4 million people displaced or made homeless by 7 fires. Burial records, every digit traceable to source material. This is not estimation, this is accounting. Cold, factual, documented. Wildfires now burn year-round basis across California. 10 of 20 most destructive fires in California in terms of structures destroyed happened in last 4 years before Camp Fire. 8 of them happened within last 2 years. Rate increasing, severity increasing, urban interface expanding. Population growing in high-risk zones. Infrastructure aging. PG&E transmission towers averaging 68 years old in 2017. Some 108 years old. Mean life expectancy, 65 years. System failing, 1 hook failed, 1 tower. 85 dead. Same story, different century. Chicago. Equipment sent wrong direction by watchman error. Minutes lost. Fire spread. San Francisco. Earthquake broke mains. But insurance fraud meant some property owners set own fires. Oakland. Small fire declared out. Embers smoldered. No follow-up inspection. Reignited next day. Paradise. Less than 30% code red sign-up. Alert system failed. FEMA system failed. Residents knocked on doors manually. Human systems fail. Technology fails. Nature does not care. Hamburg firestorm, 70 kilometers per hour, wind speeds generated by fire itself. Oakland, 2,000-degree temperatures, 10-minute house collapse time. Paradise, 106 acres per minute burn rate first hours. Do the math, 106 acres per minute. Mile-wide wall of flame in 2 hours. town of 26,000 people. 4 hours, 95% destroyed. There's no fighting that, there's only running. And sometimes running is not fast enough. Sometimes traffic jams. Sometimes elderly cannot move. Sometimes fire moves faster than cars can drive through smoke and debris. Sometimes people die in place, in their homes, in their cars, on the streets, trying to save pets, trying to save family, trying to breathe. 70% suffocate before burning. Carbon monoxide. Fire consumes oxygen. Lungs cannot function. Bodies found sitting in chairs, standing in doorways, lying in beds, peaceful, asleep, poisoned by air, then burned after death. Evidence cremated, identification difficult, orange plastic buckets, bone fragments, DNA when possible. Otherwise, unknown remains. Mass burial. Potter's Field, names on memorial walls, numbers in databases, that is all that remains. San Francisco led to emergency water systems, seismic building standards. Oakland led to wildland firefighting gear, coordinated communications, interface management, Paradise leading to enhanced WUI codes, evacuation planning, elderly assistance protocols. Each disaster pushed change. Each failure forced adaptation. Cities learn, cities evolve, but cities keep burning. Cannot eliminate all ignition sources. Cannot eliminate failure because systems are run by humans and humans make mistakes. So cities burn, have always burned, will always burn. Question is not whether, question is when, and how many, and how bad. Tokyo showed that incendiaries could create firestorms in wooden cities. Hamburg showed that coordination and timing could generate self-sustaining vortex fires. Dresden showed that even cultural centers with minimal military value would burn when targeted. Chicago showed that natural disasters magnified by human construction created perfect conditions. San Francisco showed that earthquake plus fire equals total destruction when water fails. Oakland showed that wildland-urban interface plus wind plus drought equals inevitable disaster even in modern cities with professional fire services. Paradise showed that aging infrastructure plus climate change plus inadequate preparation kills people regardless of codes and warnings. Same pattern, different manifestation, always the same result. Ashes, bodies, economic collapse, mass displacement, then rebuilding. Memorial services, lessons learned, new codes, better equipment. Until next time. Because there's always a next time. Cities built in fire zones. People living in tinderboxes, hoping wind does not blow, hoping spark does not fly, hoping this year is not the year, until it is. Analysis of campfire burn patterns by National Institute of Standards and Technology identified 23 life-threatening entrapment and burn-over events. 23 separate incidents where fire trapped or overtook people, compromised escape routes. 17 burnovers directly involved evacuating civilians. 300 to 500 people total. 12 events occurred on primary egress arteries. 5 cases, traffic stopped by gridlock or obstruction before fire arrival. Then fire caught them, could not escape, burned in place. This detail sat in forensic reports, published 2021, 3 years after fire. Most people never saw it. Numbers higher than reported. Casualties potentially undercounted. Trauma underestimated. Because fire moves faster than evacuation. Because roads jam. Because people panic. Because systems fail every time, some pattern. All documented, all sourced, all real. Not ancient history, not mythology, not speculation. This happened. These people died. These cities burned. The evidence sits in archives. The survivors tell their stories. The lessons are there to be learned. Cities keep building in fire zones. Infrastructure keeps aging. Climate keeps changing. And the pattern continues. Wind, fuel, ignition, failure, catastrophe. Written in flame. Recorded in ash. Counted in bodies. 7 times in 150 years. And counting. Because the next fire is always coming. Always has been. Always will be. The question is not whether your city will burn. The question is whether you will be ready when it does. Because the receipts show nobody ever is. Not Tokyo. Not Hamburg. Not Dresden. Not Chicago. Not San Francisco. Not Oakland. Not Paradise. 7 cities learned the hard way. 7 firestorms wrote the lesson in blood. And still cities burn. Still people die. Still the pattern repeats. Same formula, different location, same result. Ashes. Always ashes. That is what fire does. That is what fire has always done. And unless something fundamental changes, that is what fire will always do. Burn cities, kill people, destroy everything, then move on, leaving only charred foundations and orange plastic buckets full of bone. That is the truth. Cold, hard, documented, 7 times over.